ladies and gentlemen, the DA has become right-wing. Well, I mean, if you read mainstream media, that's what you will think. But no, the DA had the Congress during the course of the last weekend. The Congress happens once every few years where they decide what the DA is going to be for the foreseeable future. And as we suspected, John Steenhuisen was re-elected DA federal leader. Helen Zille was elected as chairperson of the Politburo. We don't know the names. They got very complicated names in the DA. So all in all, Aaron, Patriots are in control.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's just start this off by saying, yes, you can love him, you can hate him, you can tell us that we're DA shills, you can tell us that we're paid for opposition, you can tell us whatever you want. But at the end of the day, the DA is the official opposition in South Africa. And therefore, what they do as the official opposition, running the only province in South Africa that is not ANC controlled, they are an important force when it comes through to the political discourse. And therefore, we do give them more interest and more time on air because they are that much more important right now.
And interestingly, other than the leadership races, which we sort of knew would happen in the way they did, I want to focus on two resolutions that they passed at that particular Congress. Number one, John Steenhuisen stated that the EFF is the number one enemy of the DA. And I think that's quite interesting and actually quite smart. Because what is the big criticism of the DA? You spend all your time talking about the ANC. Right? That is a big criticism. We've made it as well, to be fair. Stop just criticizing the ANC, do your own shit. Now, apparently they heard us, and like, no, actually the EFF is the number one enemy of the DA, and we'll fight tooth and nail to bury them forever, which is good, I think.
DA did actually explain why they want to take this approach. It's because they say the ANC are already in power. So removing the ANC from power is like, well, okay, that should be common sense. They are in power. They've been in power since 94. The EFF haven't. They are nowhere. And so the EFF have everything to gain and nothing really to lose. When it comes through to the ANC, they've already gained it all. The only thing they've got is to lose. So they want the ANC to be a loser. They want to be the winner. But they've taken a different approach when it comes through to the EFF, because the EFF, they've simply said, they don't want them to win, and they are going to actively pursue anything they can to ensure that that party does not win.
And this tells us a few things about the DA. Number one, okay, there's acceptance that the ANC is in power, which we all know. But number two, most importantly, if the EFF and ANC get into opposition together or through a coalition in 2024, the EFF will be in the driving seat of that particular coalition. They will be able to bamboozle their way through the ANC. They'll probably take over the ANC like a parasite. And basically what the DA is doing is hedging its bets that should that happen, they are geared up for it in terms of PR and propaganda. And if it doesn't happen, they'll take credit for it anyway. So smart move either way.
It is a smart move, and they have obviously justified why they have taken this approach. And what they've done is they've talked about Johannesburg, where the Johannesburg executive now has doubled in size since the ANC and the EFF partnered. That basically means that in typical fashion, the way that they dish out patronage is they just employ everyone. So the employment network just seems to balloon overnight, and everybody's got these big salaries to do pretty much fuck all. And they say that they've seen this now go on steroids when it comes through to Johannesburg, which shows what an ANC-EFF coalition in 2024 would look like according to them. And they say that for the wealth of the country, in other words, they don't want the coffers to be run completely dry. They say that they want to stop that from occurring by ensuring the EFF never gets anywhere close to the levers of power.
So that's the one resolution they passed. The second resolution is actually more interesting. It's to do with foreign policy. Number one, they still, said something about Ukraine and an act of war and how disgusting the Ukraine war is and Russia's bad, etc., etc., etc. But in the same breath, they don't want South Africa removed from BRICS. They're quite willing and happy to continue South Africa being in BRICS. But interestingly, BRICS is by far the largest bloc of countries which are neutral on the war in the Ukraine. So I wonder if this is a bit of smart politicking, where it's what we suggested a while ago. Not that they watched this video and made resolutions based on that, but what we said is feel free to have as much like anti-Russian propaganda as you want in terms of rhetoric, but know full well that that propaganda does not have to be fulfilled by actual action where you want nothing from Russia, because Russia could be important as a South African first international policy. So by continuing with BRICS, maybe they are playing that game quite well.
I suppose that's interesting because, as you rightly point out, what does that mean in terms of the Russian-Ukraine war? What they basically said is that they would like peace to be pursued between the two countries. But I did notice that there were things they could have said that they didn't, like we call for the arrest of Vladimir Putin when he comes through to Russia. They could have said things like Vladimir Putin's a war criminal, the usual things that come out the White House. And some of that was, was noticeably missing. They did seem to be taking a slightly more nuanced approach to it. And hopefully they are recognizing that the further entrenched they get in being anti-Russian, the more they will drive their enemy into the hands of their true mortal enemy, the ANC.
Yeah, indeed. So overall, based on the DA Congress, as I said, Patriots in control. And for those who are aware of internet culture, that's a QAnon phrase. And I like using it because it's funny and it triggers people. But overall, what we're hoping to see from this is a sort of a DA that's more mature, more certain of its future, more entrenched leadership in terms of detailing that, listen, we've got an outright mandate now to do what we need to do. And hopefully a lot more testicular fortitude come out of the DA come 2024. Overall, I'm pretty positive about this Congress. I quite like what they've done, but we'll see, of course, how the cookie crumbles. Will the DA change fundamentally, or is it still going to be sort of on the fence central lib that no one really loves but is forced to vote for?
Yeah, so it's very interesting that there was one other policy that the voters keep in place, and that was the independence of the Reserve Bank. They said that the ANC wants to kill monetary policy in South Africa, and they don't. And so they are voting right now so that they can send a strong signal to investors for 2024 that they have no plans to nationalize the living shit out of the country, and they want the Reserve Bank to remain independent because that is going to be good in terms of inflation and keeping monetary policy under control so that when they take power, they can basically fix the place. That was a very interesting approach. With that all being said, even the man-child, Adrian Basson, has come out and basically praised the DA for their conference, which I must say was the only thing over the weekend that actually took me by surprise. Why that becomes interesting is that when the legacy media starts to praise the DA, you know that there's something on the horizon, right? Because, I mean, as we all know, Adrian's usually so far up Cyril's backside. I think when Cyril wipes, Adrian gets a rash. So all you can kind of see is like there's clearly something in the water and things are clearly starting to change. I think what was interesting is about what he noticed that was different. And I think we should end on this point. The massive difference he contrasted between the ANC's conference and the DA's conference was that during the ANC's conference, there was one demographic which you basically saw unanimously everywhere. As Adrian highlighted, that conference also seemed to be rather amateurish in the way it was run. It looked like a fight at your local at your local pub in PE. It didn't look like a political conference. Whereas the DA's conference was polished, the leadership debate was very clean, it was very logical. And the one thing that Adrian did highlight is the actual true diversity of the conference. The amount of young, professional Black leaders, colored leaders, Indian leaders, and he highlighted this as actually being a proper diverse racial party. It's not a Black nationalist party, which you got the distinct impression of the ANC's conferences. That's exactly what it was. This felt like, according to Adrian, a very diverse party structure with very vibrant and youthful potential leaders. So even Adrian concludes in his own article that the only criticism anybody ever leads at the DA is just a whites party. And even he said, you can't make that claim anymore.
So really the question becomes, now that the mainstream media are happy with the DA and find it progressive and they find it rational and they found it sparkly, they just hosted the Apple event of political rallies, maybe the regime change on the horizon, my friends. Like, for the MSM to lose faith in the ANC, it's taken 30 years and like 10 years too late. But maybe there is regime change now, where people are quite willing to say, oh, look, the DA does actually have Black people in it, even though they had it for 30 years. But now they're finally noticing it. Who knows what might happen once MSM sees that.